by again on our presentation, um, and it's this is about the inflation. So before we begin, I would like to take a minute and thank you, Gillette, because she put the presentation together and she's doing this live as well. So thank you, Gillette, and I'll get going. By the way, I'm a mortgage agent with Dominion Lending Centers, and couple of things I would say as we dive into this webinar best practices. Something I've sort of built a list over time, last 4 or 5 years as I've been doing it. Quiet place is ideal for better listening during the webinar. Headphones are a great idea for easier understanding. um, if you can put your mobile phone in silent mode, that would avoid interruptions. And best to avoid multitasking for optimum results. Checking emails, sending texts, etc. Only takes your focus away from the presentation, and there are things that you miss. Um, and last request is kindly stay present, and sitting down really helps with it. So with that being said, today's topic is inflation. And again, thank you for attending the webinar. The presentation will be about 25 to 35 minutes. I might take a 5-minute break in between just to grab my tea. And please ask questions in the comment section. I will answer them at the end of the presentation. And at the end of the webinar, you will learn more about inflation, something which is a hot topic as we speak. Um, Before we begin, ways to connect with us: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, website. All of those are here. And on top of it, we have a mortgage app, which you can download from the website on the right, faisalgarasia.com. And when you go on it, Apple or Android, any of those, you can choose whichever is applicable to your phone, and you can download the app and play with the numbers. Today's topic: why should we care about inflation? Now, we've been hearing this word over and over and over since the early of this year. Inflation, inflation, inflation. And it's a technical term. So I'm here to break it down and see how and why and so on. And there's no real solution to it yet, but understanding the problem really helps you for the next steps, if you have to take them. So inflation is the definition of the inflation here is the rate of increase in prices over a given period of time. Now, Milton Friedman, he explained this in a much easier way, where too much money chasing too few goods. Meaning, if for this cell phone, um, if you and I are looking to buy the same item, let's just say it's only one item, and we both are looking to buy, we will bid and pay more just to get it. And that adds to the inflation. That's sort of like how, where there's too much money chasing too few goods, and therefore there's automatically the seller of that phone is going to raise the price, which is partly inflation. Is inflation a good or a bad thing? Now, while inflation is generally considered harmful, some economists believe that a small amount of inflation can help drive economic growth. And it is true. A small amount of inflation is a good factor to have. The Federal Reserve, however, targets the inflation at 2% based on CPI, which is Consumer Price Index. However, that's their target, and it's not necessary that they hit the target. As long as they are somewhere close, they're okay. But recently, for last 9, 10 months, the numbers have been way above target, which is what has forced them to increase the overnight bank rate to combat inflation. Now, for 2021, an inflation of 3.4% was calculated. The price increase was 823.53% since 1960. Now, remember, we're taking 1960 as a start point. An item that cost $100 in 1960 cost $923.53 at the beginning of 2022. That's what those numbers mean. I'm just trying to break it down in real dollar and cents, because the reality is when you look at a percent, that's out of 100, and it's not really the number that you pay or you get. Yes, of course, there's a calculation in between, and you can come up with that number, but I'm trying to break it down to the numbers for you. Um, for September 2022, the year over year inflation rate was 6.9%. What that means is last year, September 2021 to 2022 September, year over year, the inflation rate was 6.9%. Now remember, the target is expected to be 2%, but when it is 6.9, which is 4.9% higher than the target, and that sort of is concerning, um, because remember, that inflation going up that high that quick could damage the economy drastically. Inflation is like a double-edged sword, if I may say. It's good to have because it helps with economic growth, but if not controlled well, it will damage the economy very quickly, very fast. We see this in some of the other parts of world. Most of inflation is predominantly seen as a harming factor in underdeveloped countries. So too much of it is not a good thing. Now, inflation rate in comparison over the years: 2021, 3.4%. 2020, barely any. 2019, 2018, so on and so forth. Now, this is in we also have chart where it's comparison of Canada to Europe to USA and the world. So if you look at the Europe, it's not 2021 wasn't as bad for Canada. Inflation was a little higher, even for states, USA. So the entire world is at 3.42%. So we're sort of at a world average, but we should be lower because a lot of the underdeveloped countries have much higher inflation, and therefore the average sits at 3.42%. Um, our our numbers should be closer to 2, which is what Bank of Canada targets for. Inflation comparison of Canada and USA, since we are neighboring countries. It's and our economies are very close, connected. It's a good idea to look at a graph that represents both. And here's the chart. Of course, the blue line is Canada, the pink line is USA. I know the colors are kind of not perfect, but they're close. Now, Canada's inflation rate, and we're going as far as last year, October, and we're going in quarters, 4.7, 4.7, 4.8, 5.1, and then look at it in April, starting January, it started to go up, and February, March is so drastically going up. It's month over month, by the way. Sorry. So it's going up drastically, and in April it started to kind of slow down, and then it's boost again, and now it's on the um, downward trend. But it will take time before it normalizes again. Specifically, the rates going up takes some time for the inflation to come down, because it's not directly related. The rate doesn't directly affect inflation, but rate affects the economic growth, and the growth affects the inflation rate. So it doesn't have a direct correlation, but it does have an indirect correlation with a piece in between. When is inflation good for the economy? Inflation theoretically helps increase production. Inflation makes it easier for debtors who repay their loans with money that is less valuable than the money they borrowed. So a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. That's something in the finance industry you'll hear this and so on, and therefore I'm breaking it down further. Your $100 today will have lesser value 5 years from now. And when I say dollar worth today is worth more than tomorrow, it's, one day doesn't make much of a difference. It's a very, very, very insignificant number. However, over a period of 5 years, which is what your mortgage term is normally, it will make a huge difference. So, for instance, you can buy 5 items with over $100 today. However, the same 5 items for the same $100, you may be able to afford 2 or 3 items. That's how inflation seems to work. So, ending this presentation, in conclusion, I will say inflation is an overall increase in prices or the cost of living in a country. Some inflation reflects global development that we don't have control over. For example, the war between Russia and Ukraine, we have no control over that. However, it will add to the inflation. Why? Because there are products that we buy from Russia and from Ukraine, and because they're in war, they're no longer available to serve the rest of the world with their products, and therefore they are out of the exchange, the product exchange chain, because they're busy fighting, and therefore now Canada or any other country for that matter has to resort somewhere else, where, going back to our first slide, too much money chasing too few goods. Now, because these two countries are out of the calculation, there are rest of the countries that are producing the same goods will charge more, because now they know there's a shortfall of product, because these two countries are out. So that's how inflation works. Inflation also means demand is greater than the supply. So when you talk in economics, there's something called as a supply curve and a demand curve. When the supply is greater than the demand, and when the demand is greater than the supply, it outstrips, and when it outstrips, the meeting point is your price point. Therefore, your supply stays the same and your demand is going up. Your price point is clearly going to increase, which increases the cost of the product or service, which is partly inflation. So with that, I will end. Um, and our goal, my goal, is to find the lowest interest rate and fund your mortgage within 10 days from application. That's my goal. And I seem to achieve this over and over. But that is something in our industry that is hard to find. Um, And with that, I'll say thank you all for everyone who's watching this. And here's the last slide where you can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course the website. And don't forget to download our app, which is on FaizalGarasia.com. All you have to do is go on the website, and you'll be given the option right there on right on top of the website, and I suggest you play with it because it's an amazing app that you can plug in the numbers and see what the payment would be, so on and so forth, and go from there. Thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate your presence. And with that, I'll say thank you again.